All right, everyone. Consistency. So there's a couple reasons we're talking about consistency today. For the past few weeks, we've been talking about obstacles on the journey, and we started the whole discussion, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, with this idea that you and I, each and every one, that we are on a journey of sorts. Okay. Now, it's not a physical journey. It's not like Marco Polo. We're not going to go travel around the world. But it is a journey nonetheless. It is a journey in consciousness. It is an inward journey. Right? And the great mystics and the great sages and the great teachers all tell us this, is to go within, to go within. In the Old Testament, in the Jewish Bible, it says, be still and know, be still and know. And in the philosophy of the Greeks at the Temple of Apollo, it says, know thyself, know thyself. And again, we're told in the Old Testament to keep with all diligence the matters of your heart, that's your subconscious mind, your heart. For out of these are the issues of life. In the New Testament, we're told to go within to the kingdom within, the kingdom. And of course, the kingdom that Jesus spoke of, I find the best description that works for me is this is the experience of the presence of God, the kingdom. It's not a physical place. It's not, we don't have to pass through pearly gates to get there, but it is an experience. This is an experience that we are talking about. So we start with the assumption then that we are on this journey. Excuse me, I have to get a napkin here. Cough. Excuse me. We start with this assumption that we are on this journey, but it is an inward journey, and it is a journey in consciousness. It is not a journey that we have to get up and move, but moving, physically doing something, can be a way of reinforcing this. You know, our lives are very symbolic in some cases. I'm moving forward. Just a little side here. When I started to learn about directing stories in film and television, in the movies, when somebody is moving forward, they are moving from the left side of the screen to the right. When somebody is going backwards in time, like they're going back to try to recreate something or find something in the past, they're going from the right to the left. And no one knows exactly how that, they call it the grammar of film. Nobody knows how that started, but yet it has become almost a standard. So now I've ruined your movie watching experience from now on. Every time you see somebody walking, you're going to say, well, what's going on here? Are they moving forward? But to physically get ourselves started sometimes helps us to realize that what we want to do is we want to move our consciousness forward. So as I said in the email I sent out last night, you know, there's this quote that we get from ancient China. You've probably seen it on a fortune cookie somewhere. And it says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, a single step, a single step. So we have this journey that we know that we are on, but perhaps not deliberately on or consciously on or as diligently on as we feel that we ought to be. And it has to start with a single step. But a journey of 1,000 miles may start with a single step, but it requires something else. See, one single step is not enough. There has to be consistency. There has to be consistency. We have to put one foot in front of the other, and then the other in front, and so on and so on and so on. I remember learning how to march in the army, you know, and they have all these reasons that they do it this way, but we had to learn how to march in step. Everybody's left foot moved at the same time. Everybody's right foot moved at the same time, you know, and your unit, your 240 some odd people that were in the company, you know, were moving as one unit. Now psychologically they were conditioning us to think as part of the unit. but physically they were getting us into consistency. So we started to feel the rhythm. Everybody's head was moving the same way at the same time, consistency. And it became almost a drone, kind of like repeating a chant over and over again. We got into this rhythm, we got into this move. And in order to keep us in that, they had us singing little ditties. They called them jodies. If you ever seen a movie about soldiers, they're always singing when they're marching, Ain't no use in looking down, there ain't no discharge on the ground, sound off, that kind of stuff. But it gets you into a consistency, it gets you moving, gets you repeating, and you stop thinking about, this is a 10-mile hike, this is a 20-mile hike, how long is this going to take? It's just put one foot in front of the other. Just stay in the rhythm, just be consistent. And after a while, before you know it, you're there. You're there at your destination. The miles have gone by. By the way, another aside, mile, the word mile that we get comes to us from the Latin, and it means 1,000, right? And a mile was the distance that a soldier could walk in 1,000 paces, and a pace being 2 steps. 1,000 paces, a milli pacem was a mile. So that's the way they counted. That's their consistency. That's the way they went on. So a journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a step, but it must continue. It must continue. We have to be consistent. Now, if we're not consistent, what happens is we get scattered results. A few months ago, we were talking about Erich Fromm's The Art of Loving, and he said that we should think of loving as an art. Much of our society thinks of loving as kind of an event, that it's something that happens to us, and we don't understand how it happened, and it's just, my God, there we are, we're in love, And he said, think of loving as an art, as any art that you want to learn. Can you imagine if we wanted to learn how to paint with oil, and we ran down to the store and we bought a complete set of paints, and we bought an easel, and we bought canvases, and we bought brush cleaners and a palette, and we had technically all of the things that we needed to paint, and then we go on the internet and we subscribe to a course on how to paint, or we turn on the TV and we watch Bob Ross making his happy little trees, And we get everything out and we get started and we put our smock on, we even put our little beret on and cock it to one side, And we do that for a week. And then we fold everything up and we put it away and we go on to do something else. And then maybe a year goes by and we say, you know what, I really would like to do that, So then we take out all of our stuff again. And if you're like me, you got to say, now, where did I put everything? I put some of it over here, I put some of it over there, and it takes me another week to just find where I scattered everything. And then I get it all together and I get it all out, and I turn on the video and I say, well, you know what? The last time I watched this course, I was up to video 4. So I'm going to start at video 4. Now I turn on the video and I'm at video 4. And I can't do the things that are in video 4. I don't remember. I don't remember what transpired in videos 1, 2, and 3. I've lost some ground. So now I have to go and I have to back up. Another example is when I was learning how to fly. I discovered that I had to go once a month. If I did not go out to the field and practice once a month, if I waited 6 weeks and I went out to the field, I spent the first half of my lesson just trying to get back to where I was a month ago. In other words, my skills had deteriorated. See, it takes practice. It takes consistency. And if we are not consistent, then what happens is we are constantly restarting. We are losing ground. We are not steadily moving forward. Now, there's times, I was thinking this morning, there's a cartoon I really used to enjoy in the Sunday papers, and it's probably still around. I just haven't seen it for a while. It's called The Family Circus, and it was about this young family, and they had 3 little kids, school-age kids, small children, and just kind of the cute and precious things that children do. And there was one cartoon that kind of stuck out in my mind, and the little one comes in the door and is all disheveled and dirty and sweaty and all this, and the mom says, "What took you so long to get home?" And the kid says, "Well, I came straight home from school. I don't know what you're talking about." And then there's this little map that shows you where the kid was. And the kid got out of school and went to the playground and played on the swings, and then went to the toy store and looked in the windows at the toys, and then went to the pet shop and looked at the puppies, and then went over to grandma's house and had a cookie, and then went over to a friend's house and played out in the yard. And the little one went all of these other places before they got home. Now, in their mind, they came straight home. But in fact, they kind of were inconsistent. That they went other places. Now, it's okay to go other places. It's okay to have other experiences. It's okay to enjoy life as we are on our journey. But what's not okay is just to forget that we are on our journey. Excuse me here. My nose is running a little bit. The allergies are up high. So what we're talking about today is the importance of consistency in our spiritual practice, right? So we talked about obstacles along the way. We talked about identifying the things that we encounter on the journey that the mentors have told us to expect along the way, right? To recognize what they... I don't think there's a precise translation for it. So sometimes it's called ignorance, sometimes it's called lack of spiritual understanding, but basically what it means is we don't see things as they are. We don't see things in the spiritual truth. We see things as we think they are. We see things as race consciousness tells us that they are. And that becomes an obstacle for us because we believe that what we are seeing is the only truth, and it's not. And then our ego gets in the way, this idea of separation, this idea that we are apart from God, we are apart from each other. Right? And I think we're starting to see that as we were talking before the service started. I think as we go through this pandemic together, people are starting to recognize that we are one, we are in this together. Right? And what's important in life now is love. Is love, is experiencing that unity, is experiencing that oneness. We have the obstacles of grasping and aversion. There are things that we want to hold on to, we don't want to let go of. We're very attached to them, and we have things that we don't want to experience. And being stuck one way or the other can delay us. And then the biggest one is fear, and the primary fear is the fear of death. And as long as we get caught up in those obstacles, it's kind of like a diversion that we go through, maybe not a pleasant diversion, but it's a diversion that we go through, like the little kid, instead of going straight home, it went over here, it went over there, it went everywhere else. So what we want to do is we want to look at using our spiritual practice consistently as a way to move us along the path and move us through the obstacles, beyond the obstacles, around the obstacles, over the obstacles. Doesn't matter. Dissolve the obstacles. Let the obstacles go. So something that comes to us from the Tao is that water is kind of soft. Water doesn't resist. Water doesn't struggle, If water is kind of flowing down a stream and there's a boulder in the middle of the stream, the water just goes around it, The water doesn't just beat it up and try to break it down. The water just gently flows around it. Not resisting, but just being steady, just being consistent in its path. And what happens over time is in fact the gentle action of the water over a very, very long period of time will wear that boulder down. We'll break it down into pebbles, and then the pebbles will tumble along the stream bed and they will turn into sand. So there's consistency over eons and eons. it is consistency that is important. We don't want to begin and then go someplace else and get distracted and then come back and say, oh, where was I? I have to start again. So one reason we're talking about consistency today is that spiritual practice and consistency in our spiritual practice is the way to keep ourselves moving along the path. The other thing is that now that we are dealing with this pandemic, we all have a lot of time that we didn't have before. And it's interesting because many times when we were having classes and we would talk to people about spiritual practice, they would say, well, you know, I'm busy. I just don't have the time. I have to get up in the morning. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to go to work, yada, yada, which we all experience. Right? And suddenly that's turned upside down for many of us. Even those of us who are still working from home, we don't have to commute anymore. You don't even have to get dressed anymore, you know. You can sit there on your video conference with just the top on and your PJ bottoms on, and nobody's going to know, you know. So how much time have we saved just by not having to commute? And then many of us, work is gone for the time being. You know, there is no work. We are at home. So we have plenty of time now. And we can find a way to use that time for our spiritual practice. Now I realize that everybody's going to tell you that, you know, you can use your time for this, that, or the other thing. The fitness coaches are putting videos out there for people to do home exercises. And that's good. That's good. There's probably plenty of time for it all. But I would say the most important thing is the spiritual practice. Because we are going to be growing spiritually long after these bodies are gone. I'm not saying we shouldn't exercise. No, I'm saying we should do our spiritual practice first. It should be kind of like number one on our list. And the other reason for talking about it now is that if you want to consider that our growth, our spiritual growth, remember our spiritual growth is simply constantly discovering more of the presence and the activity of God within us. That's our growth. That's what we're here to do. That is the journey that the mystics tell us that we are on. So our spiritual growth is change. We are constantly changing. We are changing from our old sets of beliefs, our old way of thinking, our old way of acting, into a new way of being based on our growth. Now, it's very important to consider here that what really produces a change in our consciousness is that exposure to and experience of the presence of the divine. And all of the different techniques that we have, meditation, treatment, visualization, affirmation, all of those in some way bring us into a closer realization. Dr. Holmes called it a conscious realization of the experience in the presence of God. That's kind of, if you want to think that there's a destination of the journey, if there could be such a thing. That's what we're talking about. And when we have that, to the degree that we have that, our consciousness has changed. Now, education helps to change our consciousness. Repetition helps to change our consciousness. Song helps to change our consciousness. All of these kind of things help us along the way. But the thing that has the greatest effect is the touching, as Emmett Fox says, when the dove alights. It is when we, in our spiritual practice, we begin to have that experience to some degree. So what happens is we are in effect deliberately trying to change ourselves, trying to change our consciousness. That is what we are deliberately trying to do. We have been born into a world that thinks one way. We have been raised in a family that thinks one way. We have studied in schools that taught us another way. And all of those ways, to a very large degree, are secular ways. Okay? They are the ways of making a living in this world, of raising a family in this world, of being in this world. And the spiritual view is we are in the world, but we are not of it. We're in the world, but we are not of it. So we are trying to change from this materialistic view of the world, and that is that everything comes from matter, and consciousness comes from matter. Everything comes from matter. That is the materialistic view of the world, to the spiritual view of the world, which is that everything is spirit in expression. Everything. Right? So the energy becomes the matter. Where did the energy come from? The energy is part of spirit. Spirit taking form is the spirit. And it's hard for us to kind of really believe that, because everything that we see around us, everything that we've been taught, is kind of opposed to that. But that's what we're doing. We're changing worldviews. If you want to think of it in just strictly a secular way, we're changing worldviews. We are moving from one opinion of the way things are to another opinion, but more importantly, we are moving from one experience of the way things are to another experience of the way things are. So we're trying to change. And what we tend to find in change, when we're doing change, is that we learn about something new and we begin to experiment with something new, and we try to incorporate the new things into our current way of living. And the example we used to use is, it's like going down a river in two canoes. And you've got one foot in one canoe, which represents the old way of doing things, and you've got the other foot in the other canoe, which represents the new way of doing and seeing things, you see. And as long as the river is not moving too fast, there's not too many ripples on it, as long as it's just gently down the stream, we can do that, see, we can do that. So we're standing there with one foot in each canoe, kind of fat, dumb, and happy, saying, yeah, I think I'm getting used to this new way of being. I think I'm really kind of catching on to this new way of experiencing life. Yeah, I think I'm really getting this idea that I am a spiritual being in a spiritual universe here and now. And then what happens is we come to a set of rapids, you see, and the water starts churning, and it gets a little unsettled. The two different canoes are, they're bouncing at different rates. And we can hold on for a little while, But at some point we have to make a decision. At some point we have to decide which canoe we're going to get into. It can be one or the other, but it can't be both. And what most people do is they go back into the old canoe. They go back into the old canoe. So what happens is in times of uncertainty, in times that we're facing now, in times when there's a great deal of fear in the world, you turn on the TV and it's fear, In times when things are in doubt, what we tend to do as human beings is go back to the old way. And what we want to do is to be consistent in our spiritual practice, to continue in our new way of thinking, in our new way of thinking, in our new way of being, in our new way of expressing life. So this requires, first of all, your intention. You have to have the desire to do that. Now it doesn't tell us in the fortune cookie if this journey of 1,000 miles was deliberate. If the person who embarked on the journey had a specific destination 1,000 miles away, or they just started walking. It's like the movie Forrest Gump. He just started running one day for no particular reason. But nevertheless, they started and they remained consistent. And we have sort of a way of taking that the next step, which says, we know we must start, we know we must be consistent, but we know where it is that we're going. We are going within, and we are going within to dissolve everything within us that somehow separates us from each other and from God. In other words, what we are doing is we are going within ourselves for a deeper experience of love, because when the love is there, the other things dissolve. They dissolve. So again, Dr. Holmes gives us the visual image of a jar of water. We take, and I remember the mason jars, when we used to can vegetables in the mason jars, which I don't know why they called it canning when we were putting it in jars, but nevertheless, we had mason jars where we canned vegetables in them. So you imagine you have a mason jar full of clear water, and you take a few drops of ink from an inkwell. Remember inkwells? There's my age. Take a few drops of ink from the inkwell, and you drop them into the water, and the ink diffuses so that the whole glass of water kind of gets a colored tint to it. So if you have blue ink, the whole jar of water kind of takes on this very, very light blue haze, you know. And now that's raised consciousness. Those are the ideas of raised consciousness. Those are the ideas of separation that are within us. And now you want to get rid of those. See? Now you can't go in there. You can't somehow go in there and just grab the molecules of ink and take them out of the water. That's kind of not possible to do. But what you can do is take that jar of water and put it under the tap. And you can start the tap water flowing very gently, consistently, but gently, into that jar of water. And as that clear water slowly enters into the jar, of course the water that's in the jar overflows and spills out. And over time, with consistency, over time, the water in the jar is clear again. Right? But remember, you can't just turn the water on for 2 minutes and then turn it off. You can't turn the water on for 2 minutes and turn it off for a week or a month and then go back and turn it back on again. You have to be consistent. You have to begin and you have to be consistent. So what we are doing in our spiritual practice then is every time that we are doing our spiritual practice, what we are doing is we are allowing ourselves, we are instructing ourselves. We are curious creatures because there are different parts of us that we don't seem to be aware of. One part doesn't know what the other's doing. The conscious mind doesn't know what the subconscious mind is doing. But nevertheless, it's all part of us. So what we are doing is we are instructing our own subconscious mind to experience more love, to dissolve and to eliminate everything that is unlike love. It's just that simple. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. We're just learning how to love more. We are learning how to love better. We are learning how to experience God's love more fully. And as we do that, then as we said in the opening treatment, we can't help but love each other and to be kind to each other, you know, even in dire circumstances. To just be love to one another. Alrighty then. So this then brings us to consistency in spiritual practice and what are the spiritual practices. So the first one that we talk about, and we sent these out in the little metaphysical toolbox book that Lori and I put together years ago. If you don't have one, you want one, send me an email. We'll find the file. It's a PDF file. We'll send it out to you. I'll also put it up on the Facebook page for people. Meditation. And what do we mean by meditation? I'm not talking about guided meditation. I'm not talking about music playing and somebody's voice very softly telling you to now go to a place of love. That's good. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about meditation. And Dr. Holmes frequently talked of meditation when he was talking about treatment. He used the same term pretty much for both of them. He said that meditation was kind of a direction of thought. And to me, that's treatment, and it's different. What I'm talking about in meditation is breaking our entanglement with the activity of thought. Breaking our entanglement with the activity of thought. So typically thoughts are occurring. We believe that they are our thoughts. We engage those thoughts, and by that I mean we ask and answer questions of them. You know where they come from. So the example I use many. We sit down to meditate, and the thought comes up. Well, do I have enough gas to get home from class? You know. And then now we're entangled with that thought. We say, well, when's the last time I got gas? Well, let me see. Did I get gas last payday? No, I didn't get gas. I think I need to go get gas. Well, where am I going to go get gas? See, now we're following that thought. We're engaged with that. I'm going to go to the convenience store down on the corner, the closest one, because I don't know how much gas I have left. Well, while I'm there, do I need bread and milk? See, so now we are no longer meditating. Now what we are doing is we, as Osho would say, our mind wandered like a stray dog and we followed it. See? What I'm talking about is breaking that entanglement. Breaking that entanglement. The thought goes up. Do I need gas? The thought goes by. That's it. That's it. We don't engage it. We don't think about it any further. We observe it. This is important. We become the observer of the activity of the thoughts. So the thing that helped me most was I think of the thoughts that I become aware of as almost as a TV screen in my consciousness. And things appear and things disappear. Things appear and disappear. I have to become engaged with them. You know? So maybe I'm sitting here reading a book and the TV is on in the distance and whatever is on, and I'm still reading my book, and I'm totally not affected by that TV. So all we want to do when I'm talking about meditation is to learn to break that entanglement. Now, one of the best resources that I have found on that is Osho's Book of Secrets. Now, I realize Osho, but I can tell you that from my reading of his book on meditation, that value. So the Book of Secrets lists 112 different meditation techniques. They are based on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and the idea is find one of those 112 that you like and use it. Use it consistently. Start out twice a day, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night, consistently. You can put a timer on your phone. If you have a smart speaker in your home, you can tell it to set a timer. There are meditation bell timers that you can download off of the internet. But be consistent and spend time not trying to think of anything, not trying to make anything happen, just observing thought. Just being. Just being. Joel Goldsmith asks his students to meditate 5 times a day. And he says their spiritual growth is directly related to how much time they spend in meditation. Don't meditate, don't grow. Meditate a lot, excuse me, grow a lot. The next one is treatment, which we teach a great deal of. And again, the instructions are in this book. I will email it to anyone who wants it. I will put it on the webpage. But the process of spiritual mind treatment is a deliberate process of bringing our consciousness to a point of realizing the presence of the activity of God as it relates to some specific event or condition in our lives. That's what we're trying to do. So we think there's the appearance of sickness in our lives. And what do we want to know? Well, God has never been sick. God doesn't send sickness. God is perfection. Every cell, every organ, every tissue of our body is the activity of God and therefore must be perfect. And this appearance of sickness is not a person, place, or thing that has the power to perpetuate itself. It is simply an outpicturing of a false idea. It is an outpicturing of a lie pretending to be the truth, as the way Dr. Holmes would put it. Whatever we need to do, whatever we need to say in order to bring ourselves into that realization that God is all there is and God is perfect. That God has created us out of itself, and therefore the truth of our being, no matter what it looks like, but the truth of our being is that we too are perfect, so therefore we can accept the activity of God as perfect health in our bodies. We express gratitude because it is done. We feel it is done, and then we release it. We release it to that power in the universe that responds to us according to our belief. Okay? And again, this is important. And again, every day, you know. And that, now the way that I do is I meditate first. And the meditation brings me into a deeper just experience of the oneness. And then once in that place, it becomes very easy for me to shift that into, and what do I want to have happen today? Deliberate intention. What do you want to have happen today? And maybe today all I want to have happen is to consciously be the best expression of God's love I can be. But that's what I want to have happen today, and I'm clear about that. And then I recognize that that's the reason that God created me in the first place. It created me to express through me, and it created me to express as me. So it's easy for me to, at that point, then say, so it must be so. It must be so that today is the day. Right? Now is the time we are the people, as Rabbi Hillel says. Now is the time we are the people. I am God's instrument of love today. Right? Start with your meditation. Start with your meditation. Roll into treatment. Now, there's another form of treatment called visualization, which Dr. Holmes tells us is a visual treatment. For some folks like myself, I'm auditory. I hear. I think in terms of words that I hear. Other people are visual. They think in terms of pictures that they see. Lori is a visual artist. She's a painter, and she sees things, and I hear things. So we went to see Monet exhibit up in Boston several years ago, maybe several years ago. I think maybe 25 years ago we went, and she had to tell me what the paintings were saying. I looked at the painting and I said, "What? This guy's painting fog. What is that all about?" And she had to tell me what was expressing through that visual. Right. So if you're a visual person, then a visual form of treatment might be more effective for you. And by that you are seeing that which you desire as an already accomplished fact. So Dr. Holmes gives us the example of if you wish to experience a new home, what does it feel like? Is it a country home? Do you have a front porch with a couple rocking chairs on it? Do you have a little white picket fence? Are there flowers out in the flower boxes? Do you have a beautiful green lawn? Are there trees all around? Can you feel yourself sitting on that front porch, rocking back and forth, having your glass of lemonade? Can you smell the new mown hay, the grass? See? The more that we can bring ourselves into that picture, the more we are doing a visual treatment. We know that God created us out of itself. We know that the divine has enough and plenty to do whatever ought to be done. To express its life more fully is why we are here, and therefore it has no reason to withhold from us. And then we see it in our mind's eye. Okay? And the last one I'm going to talk about today is affirmations. Now, to me, this is a greatly misunderstood technique. I remember years ago, I was working with a client out in Seattle, and a football coach up there had discovered the power of using affirmations with coaching the football team. And he retired as a teacher and a football coach, and he became a corporate consultant, and he would go into corporations and he would teach people how to use affirmations in order to improve improve their productivity at work. And it became almost a cult, and in fact they had to stop it. And this one particular client, this very big company that I was working in at the time, and they were my client. But wherever you went, people had these little special index cards. So it wasn't just a 3x5 index card, it was a special card, and it had affirmation written on the top, and it had this guy's name written on it, and they were colored, they were like beige. But wherever you went, people in the building had their affirmation card. They're sitting there at the coffee table having a cup of coffee, and they're reading their affirmations. So they're powerful, and they work, but we want to understand them, and we want to understand why they work. So we started off with the example of, the ink being dissolved into the mason jar, into the jar of water. And I want you to think of our old limiting ideas, our old limiting beliefs as a little tiny drop of that ink that's floating around in there. Excuse me, I got to get a drink of water. As I say, the pollen here is super special today. So we have these old limiting ideas, So we might start off by saying, you know what? God is perfect love, and God created me out of itself, and therefore I am perfect love. Intellectually, that makes sense. We follow that logic. But remember, there's a part of us that doesn't work analytically. It doesn't work kind of intellectually. It kind of runs on emotion, the subconscious mind. So what affirmations do, the way that I understand them, is they kind of shake up that part of us that doesn't quite believe that which intellectually we know is true. I know it's got to be true, right? God is all there is. God created me out of itself. God is expressing its life through me. Therefore, God only wishes me well. Intellectually, that makes perfectly good sense. But then there's these old ideas that we have, well, God is punishing me, or God is testing me, or God is sending me a test to see how strong I am. And all of those things that are still down in there, they're still floating around in there. Right? We learned them as children. They're still in there. They're stuck in there. So what the affirmations tend to do is shake those up. They kind of shake them loose, and that way they can be dissolved. So what we try to do is you try to find an affirmation and put it across the top of a blank piece of loose leaf paper. And you can start with anything, but let's say, just for the sake of example, I am a perfect expression of God's love. That's your affirmation, because what you want is to be a greater expression of God's love. You know that the truth is that you already are a perfect expression, but you may not be living that fully, and now you want to live it fully. So you put your affirmation across the top. Excuse me. I am a perfect expression of God's love. And what you do is you read it out loud. And of course, you're going to be doing this when you're in private somewhere. You read it out loud, and then you write down on the top line of the loose leaf paper, you write down the first thing that comes into your mind. You don't analyze it. You don't judge it. You don't engage it, just like meditation, right? It's there, and it comes out of the pen, and then you read the affirmation again. And you write down the next thing that comes to your mind, and you just keep doing that. You just keep doing that until nothing else comes to you. And what I do in order to poke it along a little bit further is say, nothing's coming to me right now. Nothing's coming to me right now. Nothing's coming to me right now, right? Read the affirmation, nothing's coming to me. Read the affirmation, nothing's coming to me. And then sometimes it starts back up again. And what will happen is if you go down after you're done, after you really nothing else comes out, and you start to read, you will find that somewhere along the line, some response that came up makes absolutely no sense. It's like, what does this have to do with that? And you've heard me use the example of when I was using this for prosperity. I had all of these different things come up. So I think it was like I'm the perfect child of an opulent universe, something like that. It was Louise Hay. And then somewhere down the middle of the page, I wrote down, "O Lord, I am not worthy to receive you, but say but the word, my soul shall be healed." Now, for those of you who have been to a Catholic church or grew up Catholic, that was something that we said as part of religious service on a regular basis. What does that have to do with being an opulent child or a child of an abundant universe? But somewhere in my consciousness, the idea of worthiness was restricting the flow of prosperity. So once I knew that that's what it was, then I changed the affirmation. See, then you make a new affirmation, and I say, well, if this idea of not being worthy is somehow blocking the flow of prosperity, then I make an affirmation for worthiness. "O Lord, I am worthy to receive you. You have made me out of yourself," something along that nature. Okay. So that's how you would use affirmations to go along. So I hope that today, that if we take nothing else out of it, is we realize that you have to have a practice. And I gave you 4 different ones to work with. You may find others. That doesn't matter to me which ones you use, right? But find something that you will use. Excuse me. Find something that you will be consistent with. Start that journey. Take that step. But then be consistent with it. Be consistent with it. meditation, treatment, visualization, which is a visual treatment, affirmation, shaking loose the old stubborn ideas that we don't want to let go of. But keep in mind that we are on a journey. We must be on it deliberately. We must be on it consistently. It is our spiritual practice that leads us into the experience of the presence of the divine. Once we get into the experience of the presence of the divine, practice is no longer required. But even the Buddha meditated several times a day. Even Jesus went off on his own several times a day. Right? So find your practice. If you need more information, then research your practice. I will send out the. I will post the book on the CSL Wilmington. I think it's still called CSL. It's on our Facebook page. If you email me, I will send you the link. Find your practice. Be consistent. When you hit the obstacles, you'll know what they are, and you can. Little biblical thing is, I just say, "Get thee behind me, Satan. Get thee behind me, Satan." Satan is an idea that separates. Get thee behind me. I'm moving forward. I'm on a journey. I've got my feet going in rhythm. My head is going up and down. My lungs are moving. The air is coming in. It's going out. I am part of life. I am an important part of life. And nothing's going to stop me now. Make good use of this time. Use your practice to move through the fear. Use your practice to expedite your growth. And so it is.